Richard can look at it because he's lagging. I don't want to waste more time. Okay, so 14. I want you to try to explain this, Lucy.
Oh,
So
okay.
here, subset which effectively uses data from the table to complete the statement, right? So very quickly, once again, we do the reverse order, always like this and then like this, right? So very quickly, here, the passage of time is among the many obstacles faced by scientists who are pursuing de-extinction efforts, that is, efforts to use breeding or a mixture of cloning to bring back extinct species. Okay, that's like Jurassic Park. Specifically, researchers are concerned that the longer a species may exist, the less likely that it is that a super happens to exist. Among candidates for de-extinction, the problem will be especially concerning for what? So very quickly, we establish a relationship, right? What is it? It's older species who have been extinct for longer. It's harder to bring them back because the environment might not match out for them anymore, right? So easiest example I think of in my head is like dinosaurs. Like, when dinosaurs there used to be a lot of CO2 in the air so they can breathe better or something like that. All right. So yeah. So then basically the older it is, right, the harder it is for them to become de-extinct. So with that in mind, we should look for this, right? So complete the statement. So then,
You just choose the oldest one, I think.
yeah, and specifically, there's one very specific thing, and I think this is something. Why do I know I'm looking for? Why do we think you need to look for the oldest one? It's because of this word here.
Support the data.
Yeah, but
Complete.
also it mentions problem. So the idea is if it's older, it's harder. So it will only be a problem if it's older. Does that make sense? Like that's I mean, obviously you got this one question right, so I'm not that
Yeah,
concerned, but here. So we're looking for what?
the oldest one.
Yeah,
This
so
that
saber
we're
tooth. Yeah.
choose.
So yep, and that's just very straightforward the answer. Let me see why Richard got.
I
Richard
think
got.
he just came in.
Wait, no, he got it right. Am I tripping?
No, wait, I don't know.
Oh, no, 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 no. Okay. Yeah, it's B. But then he circled C, I see.
Oh,
Before. Oh yeah, so he just didn't choose the oldest one. So yeah, that
I
explanation should
think
make
he
sense.
just like misread it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so too. Don't worry. I wouldn't worry too much about this one. I think one thing for you guys is speed. I do feel like weirdly enough, you guys perform a lot better when there's no pressure and when
Oh,
there's
yeah, because I
yeah,
did not time myself for this one.
yes, yes. So basically, um, speed is a very big thing, and also like pressure. Like it had to perform under pressure. It sounds
Yeah.
really weird, but I really do think you guys, by talking to you guys, I know you guys have the ability to get pretty good score already. It's just about overcoming that block. And I think one thing that will allow you guys to be more efficient is being able to quickly identify what you need to look for. Okay, next one. 15, you got this one wrong, Lucy. So let's see. Okay. So here, these type of quotes are kind of hard. So you need to pick out.
Yeah, I don't
You don't
really
like
understand what's
these
the
ones, right?
quote talking about.
Also, very quickly, do you also struggle with like poetry questions? Like,
Poetry?
yeah, because they'll say like we're like this is just thy something something. Do you know what
Yeah.
each? Okay, I'll send you a very quick screenshot about like what each one of those words mean, and it should help.
Okay.
But okay, so for this type of narrative questions, the yellow wallpaper. I don't know if you guys read it. I read it, but it's a short story, and there's a mixed feelings around her surrounding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a mixed feeling, you're looking for what?
Or mixed feeling.
Yeah, but usually it's a contradiction, right? It's like I'm happy about
Oh,
something, but sad about something. So there has to be what? Two things. Wait, it sounds really weird, but we're looking for two things. Does
yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah.
So answer choices that only have one thing cannot be the answer. So the wallpaper has a kind of sub pattern in a different shape, particularly an irritating one, right? For one you can see in certain lights and not clearly then. This is only one thing. You see?
Mm.
By moonlight, moon shines in all where the moon. I wouldn't know if it's the same paper. Um, I still don't see anything. It's one thing, right? I'm getting really quite fond of the big room, all but that horrid wallpaper. What do you see? What do you know what fond means?
Yeah, I don't know what that means, so that's
Okay,
why I
fond
was
means like
confused.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't worry about it. Fond means you're like happy about something. So like
Uh,
like I grow fond of this means I like it. So you see how there's a juxtaposition.
yeah.
Juxtaposition is basically like a comparison between
Yeah.
fond and horrid, right? Two things. And then the color is repellent, so it's not good, right? almost revolting, and then continuing on that sentiment. So you notice how even before I answer the question, the answer is C. So notice how even before I answer the question, the mixed feelings told me what I'm looking for. It told me that I'm looking for two things. But then even if you don't know what fond means, right? Did this talk about two things? No. Did this talk about two things? No. Did this talk about two things? No. So the
Well,
only
I
thing that
thought like
potentially
repellent and revolting is two things.
no, so repellent is like what? It's like an insect repellent, right?
Okay.
And then revolting is what? It's like disgusting, right?
Um,
So yeah,
do you
what's
hear
up?
better now?
Yeah, I can hear you better now. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, does that make sense? C
Yeah.
is the answer. So wait, it sounds really weird, but I think the reason why, did you know what repellent and revolting means or no?
I just searched it up, but at first I didn't know
You
it.
didn't? Okay, okay. So repellent, think about like insect repellent. And then revolting, think about like revolution. Like, you know, like revolution, like 革命, right?
Yeah.
But like to have a revolution, you want to revolt, means you don't like it. It has two meanings. To revolt means to like, revolution is like the noun, revolt is the verb. Or revolt, but revolting would be like disgusting. So it's like so disgusting to you that you're gonna have a revolution, kind of. Yeah, these words all have very similar like beginnings and sounds. So that's why you can connect them together. Okay, next one, 17, 16. Okay, 16, you guys both got this one wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, so effectively uses data from the graph to complete the statement. Okay, so we have to figure out what the statement is. So the emphasis will be at the last sentence here. The population of coral declined 9,000 years ago in this sea and around 11,000 years ago in this sea, using the ratio of this thing, which inversely correlates with oxygen levels. This person evaluated whether oxygenation played a role in the decline. So basically, as this M to C ratio goes up, what should happen to oxygen?
Goes down.
It should go down. Yeah. And then this person evaluated whether oxygen played a role in the decline of this thing, coral. Conclude that oxidation may have been important in this sea, but not in this sea. So let's check, right? If you look at the magnesium to calcium level, it shifts a lot, right? In the Alboran Sea, but not in this sea. It's the same, right? So, yeah. So if you're gonna conclude that, what should it be? So you can say, wait, years before the present. Okay, so what do we see here? Very quickly, you see that in the Alboran Sea, 11,000 years ago. So when do they start declining? Here, right? And then when this sea, it started declining 9,000 years ago. So like here. Okay, so a substantial increase in oxygenation. Did it increase or decrease?
The magnesium to calcium increase.
Are you sure it's increased? Because this is years before the present.
Oh, decrease.
So it decreased, substantially decreased. You see?
Oh,
So that's why you guys got this question wrong. It's really tricky.
yeah.
Years before the present.
Before
They like
the
doing stuff like this. But once I just say that, then it's very obvious, right?
Okay.
And then it substantially decreased. And then the things died, right? So a substantial increase. So if this substantially decreased, then oxygen should substantially what? Increase. Yes. So a substantial increase in oxygen. Huh?
I think Richard just said something.
Yeah.
But
is it better now?
Yeah, it's better now. It's better now. I can hear you now. Okay. A substantial increase in oxygenation corresponded with local decline. Okay, but
Wait,
the opposite.
Can you see the chat or no?
I can see the chat. Yeah. But did you rejoin? You should try rejoining if it didn't work. I thought you were rejoined already. Maybe I was.
I think he rejoined already. Well, I guess he can just type in the text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can communicate with the chat. And then if you have questions, like just text in the chat. And if I don't see it, if I'm like too locked in on answering the question, just like raise your hand and I'll see it. Okay. So oxygenation in the Albertan Sea was higher before the decline. No, it should be the opposite. Tend to be substantial. Oxygenation substantially higher than oxygenation near. No. Distinct decline during a substantial local decline in oxygenation. Decline, no. A substantial increase in oxygenation corresponded with the local decline. And then the opposite was true.
Yeah, so that's why I was confused
Wait,
with
this question is very
I was thinking like, is there
confusing.
really a right answer for this one?
Let me see. Because the graph itself isn't really clear, but 11,000 years ago, so and then the ratio dropped.
Yeah, whatever.
So I think it sounds.
Well, what's the correct answer for this one? Like,
The
what's
correct
the
answer for this one is B, yeah. And it would make sense. And I'll tell you why. Okay. Oh, it sounds really weird. Let me first see this. So there's some ways basically we can eliminate answers. Like I was thinking about one thing. Okay, so they gave you two things, right? So so here, substantial increase in oxygenation corresponded with local decline, which would make sense. But the opposite between oxygenation and this thing was found near. You don't see the whole point about the second question, this coast though, is that nothing really changed. You know, like it stayed pretty consistent, and the plant and the corals didn't die. So it sounds really weird, but to me, it just suggests that oxygenation level had nothing to do with whether these corals lived or died. Something else probably had an impact. So the opposite, but to claim the opposite relationship between this happened it's not true because nothing happened. Right? So that's why I would say the back portion here is completely wrong. The opposite relationship didn't happen. Now, this thing declined during a period of substantial local decline in oxygenation.
Wait, but I saw it's like a
but yes, exactly. So that's the part I'm confused about. But this thing declined near the coast during a period of little local change in oxygenation. This portion is correct. So that's what I was kind of confused about. I was like iffy on this one. Oxygenation was higher before the decline of this than after the decline. This makes sense.
Yes, I should see.
Yeah, this makes sense. Let's see. Oxygenation obviously tend to be substantially higher near the coast. No, because if it's higher, then oxygenation should be lower because they have higher levels of this. So it's not this. Does that make sense? So oxygenation is always higher before the decline, but is it higher before? Yeah. Relatively low. Inversely correlates. I'm actually interested in this one. Let me mark this one. It's 16, right? Let me check the answer for this because I do agree. It's not like it doesn't make sense.
Is there a correct answer for this one?
Yeah. There should be a I'll look into this one specifically. This question is confusing.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll look into it specifically. By the way, very quickly, one thing I would say is don't expect to get every question right. It sounds really strange. But it's fine for you guys to get questions wrong. You know, it's not that big of a deal. Don't get too caught up on it. Just work on the process, kind of. Okay. And then this person,
I think Richard has some question. He's asking like,
is there a trick to get information quicker? Yeah, so it sounds really strange. The trick is basically just active reading. Active reading basically it's the thing I told you guys about where you want to attack the question and not just read. So you always read this first, and then like it sounds really weird, but you're trying to rush and you're trying to like put yourself in a state of like hurry, you know? It sounds really strange, but you want to like practice reading faster and just like act like you're almost always out of time. You know what I mean? Don't like if you find yourself relaxing during the test, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you probably have to push yourself a little bit more, right? That's the thing that mainly I think would help with grabbing the information quicker. the thing that's very difficult though is for reading. It depends on your reading speed. Like I read really quickly, so it just becomes easier. But another way you can think about it is when you notice that when I read, I make a lot of connections to what I already know. And that's very important because that stops you from needing to read a second time. I think the problem isn't necessarily reading something and for it to take some time. The problem comes when you read it and you don't understand it, right? And then so you have to reread it again. That's the biggest problem you want to avoid. So yeah, you're out of time, so you just skip it usually. I don't think that's the way you should do it, but there's not really anything you can do in the short term to bring up reading speed. So what I would recommend is when you read it, like try to one-shot it. Like read it one time, and if there's a sentence you don't understand, like try to understand it. It sounds really weird. Like don't just ignore it. Like try to understand it because you're gonna come back to it eventually, right? That's the way I'll put it. Another thing you can do is also just be very confident in grammar so you can spend more time on reading. If you're really confident in grammar, that can also help with your reading time and you can allocate the time better, right? But if you're timing yourself, what I would say is don't get stuck on a question for over like 2 minutes. That's the kind of the problem where if you get stuck on a question for over 2 minutes, then you start rushing and then everything becomes not good. So yeah. Okay. Let me see very quickly. This is 17. Okay. So this was a period of extreme cooling between these years. Some argue that a comet fragment hitting Earth brought the cooling. Others disagree because there's no crater from such an impact. Okay, a team led by this thing saw a crater. Okay, scientists. So you see the way I'm reading this, I'm like not reading it. It sounds I'm just grabbing the main idea from each sentence, right? So it's like, okay, it was cold, and then they argued that a comet caused it. But then people disagree because there was no hole, right? And then they found a crater. Who believed the impact caused the colds, claim that this supports their view. This team says they can't determine the age of the crater. Therefore, the team suggests that what? So if they can't determine the age of the crater, that means that there's a crater here and they're saying, oh, this crater caused the cooling. But in reality, you can't determine the age of the crater. So you can't determine if it caused the cooling. So it cannot be concluded that it tied to the cooling, right? The answer is just A, very quickly. It can't be determined whether the fragment could make a crater as large as 19 meters, not mentioned. This is what we call recycled language, right? Scientists have ignored possibility something other than a fragment could have made the crater. No, like this is literally the perspective, right? This is also not mentioned at all in the text about an alternative perspective. Scientists who believe the impact caused this will have made the incorrect assumption about when the period began. Have made an incorrect assumption, but no, because they can't determine anything. The whole point is that you have no evidence. If you can claim this, that means you have evidence, right? So no, the answer is A. So yeah, one thing I would say though, Richard, if that like logic, this is module 1 right now. We're all on module 1. So if that logic makes sense to you, when I'm reading the questions, I'm literally like summarizing it and I'm ignoring half the things that don't matter. Basically, when I read like this. I'll tell you what I saw. I saw this, and then this. That's the thing that I see. I ignored all of this. I ignored all of this. And I ignored like Northern Hemisphere and stuff like that. It's like I'm as I read the sentence, I'm skipping half the sentence. The reason behind why is because half the sentence offers no value. Like me knowing the crater is called the Younger Dryas doesn't help me solve the question better, right? So for example, since the next question we're going to go over as well, very quickly, all I'll say is, for example, here, just by looking at the question alone, I can ignore all of this. Like the first sentence here, I can ignore all of this because it's not important. Because who did the study isn't that important, right? I don't need to know her name, obviously. All I need to know is what they studied. They studied the appendix, which is a organ that is present in some animals, okay? But it's generally thought to have no function. After studying so many animals, they found that it has not disappeared in a lot of animals. They also determined that basically species with the appendix have better immune systems. So therefore, they hypothesized that the appendix is likely tied to that, right? So basically, it has to tie together with the immune system. So is there a mention of immune system here? No. It's been preserved in certain animals with the benefits of immune system, maybe, right? It will emerge a great number of mammal species because it may serve a necessary function. I don't think it's necessary because it mentions it has no function, right? Produce higher concentrations of lymph node. This is just a causation that's never mentioned. So I'll lean towards B as the answer. And yeah, this answer is B, right? You see what immediately I'm able to do? I basically ignored half of it. And like the way I'm explaining the question to you guys is how I'm reading it in my head, right? There's an appendix, it has no function. They found appendix across a lot of different animals, and animals with appendix had higher this tissue, which supports immune system responses. So appendix is tied to the immune system somehow, but we don't know how. So to say that it produced higher levels is not wrong, is wrong, right? Because we still have the immune system now. So this doesn't mean that's not the case anymore. Will emerge in a great number of animal species because it may serve a necessary function to the immune system? No, because if it serves a necessary function for the immune system, it will still have a function, right? So it's being able to basically know what you're looking for, even before reading the, and also one very important thing, by the way, is notice how before I solved the question, I mentioned it has to tie to the immune system. So I immediately eliminated A. So these are very quick, like habits. It's habits, honestly, that you need to have when solving the question. And that would really help you with results. What's a comet? Oh, a comet is like a 陨石. Yeah,
Oh.
that's for the previous question. Sorry, I didn't see that. Because whenever I click, actually I can keep the chat here. Okay, never mind. I can keep the chat there. Okay.
It's okay. I can keep the chat.
Yeah, no. It's because it's because I just didn't see it. Sorry. Number 19. Right, number 19. But you got all these right, Lucy, so that's good.
I think the module 1's reading, I feel like
Easier.
I think it's easy for me.
Yeah.
As long as I have time to like really
Yes. I would say time is the biggest issue. So I think Lucy, for you, take note of what I'm saying. You know, like I'll tell you how because by the way, I never did this. I didn't do this one specifically before because I want to like show you guys how I'm doing these questions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, number 19, let's look at this. So notice how the way I'm doing the question, I'll explain to you my thoughts, okay? Now, it wouldn't make sense. It won't be a complete sentence because in the actual test, I'm not thinking in terms of complete sentences, right? So what logically completes the text? Okay, ethics, goodness depends on if the actions are good. Doesn't matter the context. So good is good, doesn't matter context. This person shown that surviving works of this express a very different view, so they disagree. Aztecs disagree. They reveal that these propose an ethical system where individual actions are judged in light of how well they accord to an individual's role in society. So context matters. Basically, some people believe context don't matter. Some people believe context matters. To the extent that these works are representative of Aztec thought, their analysis suggests, right? Now, what do they suggest? So Aztecs, what do they believe in? They believe context doesn't matter. Sorry, context matters. That's it. So I'm checking. So their analysis suggests that Aztecs would argue that context matters. So dispute the idea that morality of individual action can be assessed by appealing to standards of behavior that are independent of the social circumstances. No, they agree with this because they would have disputed the idea. So they would have disagreed with the idea that you can judge an action independent, meaning basically not connected to the context. But the Aztecs believe context matters. So this one is correct.
Wait. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I mean, do you want me to break it down slowly? I'll break it down slowly.
No, it's okay.
Wait, no. I think I know it's important. Like it's important to practice this, right? Aztecs would have disputed the idea, meaning they disagree with the idea that morality can be assessed by looking at behavior independent of. So if it's independent, that means it's not related to the circumstance, right? So they disagree that you can judge action unrelated to circumstance, but they believe circumstance matters. So they will they'll do this. Where in the text do you observe context matters? Here. So ethics believe that moral goodness depends on. So some people believe, basically here all in the front, some people believe that things are good or bad, irrespective, meaning it doesn't matter if it's the context they're carried out in. So if I help a grandma cross the street, it's always good, right? That's philosopher has shown the surviving works of Aztecs express a very different view. And then they explain. So if it's a very different view, usually it's the opposite. So the first thing says context doesn't matter. The second thing should say context matters for the Aztecs. And then it does justify this by saying they reveal an ethical system which individual actions are judged in light of how well they accord to the individual's role in society and how they contribute to the community. So so for the Aztecs, they judge based on your social standing, or aka your context. So that's why context matters. Yeah. So you can kind of get a hint of that by seeing how it expresses a very different view. Right. And so here, Aztecs do not accept the notion that morality of individual action could be fairly evaluated to people who do not live in the same society as that individual. No, they will accept the notion. They will accept the notion that you cannot judge someone from a different society because context matters. If you're from a different society, then context is different. So you can't judge them properly. So this is the opposite of what they'll believe in, right? So notice how I'm able, like, it sounds really weird. You need to have good logic. Like, okay, 当这种东西就是我觉得一开始我做这种问题的时候，它会有点烧脑，你知道吗？因为他们很喜欢这样一直换方向，对不对？就是 it's like, oh, it's the opposite of this idea, that's the opposite of that. They like doing this a lot. And initially, it is kind of annoying because you have to keep thinking about it. But as you think about it more, the easier it becomes. So it sounds really weird. Just like think about it. Like you have to just think about it. And it's like your brain's a muscle. The more you use it, the better you can figure this out. Actions by Aztecs who contribute a great deal to the community could be judged morally good, even those actions are inconsistent with the behavior of Aztecs. This is too much, basically. Right? This is too much. It's generalizing too specifically to a certain thing. Similar action performed by people in different roles would have been regarded as morally equivalent unless those actions lead to different outcomes. Similar action performed in different roles would have been judged morally equivalent. No, it wouldn't, because context matters. This is, if it's different social roles, then the context is different, so it wouldn't be judged the same. So no. Okay, good. Now we're gonna move into grammar. These are the questions that we should not get wrong. So I'll tell you guys how I do this very quickly. First, number 22. Okay, you got this one wrong. Here, plural, 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 singular. The answer is probably Z. Now I'm checking for what the subject is. Using one of these songs ensures. Using is the verb. Using is the subject. Subject verb. So the answer is D. So that's why you should never get these questions wrong, by the way. It's because it literally takes 10 seconds to solve it. Right. So be careful when it comes to just like these are kind of what I call silly mistakes. If you get grammar wrong, not good, right? Because it should be 3 points for you basically, but it's fine. Don't stress out about it too much. And then number 30. By the way, good job, Lucy, getting all of this right. Yeah, I was thinking if you guys
I don't know how I get this off, right?
I think it's just wait, it sounds really weird. For you, it's just time and pressure. That's it. If you
I
don't
think
have
it's like pressure because when I was taking the SAT, like although I'm reading the stuff, but I can feel that this thing like they didn't go through my mind. Like
yeah, it's like 左耳进右耳出.
yeah.
But it's not where you're not listening. It's like 进去而出. Yeah. No, with that, when it comes to that, that's why you have to be just disgustingly confident when in your practice, if that makes sense. If you notice that in the exam, you stress about something and like you see it and then you don't. When you notice that happen, in your practice, what you should do is just think, like build the habit of like always thinking. And then in the test, when something like that happens, then you'll do that, right? These are really kind of weird hints, but tips, but it's because I can't really change that much in 3 weeks, you know? So yeah. I have to get you guys into the right mental space and be confident enough to do this. That's it. So here, this is a kind of a tricky question. I'm surprised you got this one too. Also, I was reading this as I was yapping too. This is kind of a tricky question. So tortoiseshell appears external to the animal, protecting the body like an armor. The shell is incorrectly assumed to be exoskeleton, right? When in fact it is an endoskeleton. So it's expected to be outside. It's like an exo, so it's like an outside bone. When in fact it's an internal bone structure. So it's more like a rib than, you know, like an insect, right? So that's interesting. It's almost like saying like 你的 ribs 长在你身体外面, even though 它在你身体里面. So it seems to be appears to be external. Hence, more people incorrectly assume it to be an exoskeleton. That's the trick here. It's very easy to pick, however, because the first one says it's external, and the second sentence says it's actually internal, right? But
Like
Specifically,
incorrectly.
the first section here says that it's incorrect assumption is that it's external. Does that make sense, Richard? This one is a little bit tricky. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no worries. I'll explain it again. So here, okay, one thing you can also notice here is very quickly, this is opposite, right? That being said is also opposite. So you have two opposites here. So that's one thing that's instantly ringing bells in my head. You wouldn't be able to distinguish between the two, right? Another is, okay, so the turtle shell appears external to the animal, like a body armor. The shell is incorrectly assumed to be an exoskeleton. Pause here. So is it opposite? So does that make sense? Is this sentence from here to here, this one, and this thing two, is it opposite? So it looks like an armor, and therefore many people assume it to be an exoskeleton. That's why it's hence. It's not actually opposite. If you pick opposite, then it will be a lot of people assume it's external. And then, however, they see that it's external, they incorrectly assume that it's external, which doesn't really make sense, right? Okay. Let me see time. Okay. So time-wise, let's do for the second one. Wait, Lucy, did you? So what happened to the grammar portion
I
of the
think
second?
I skipped. Can you find like the page with like 23, 24?
Yeah.
I think I skipped this page.
Then where did the answer come from?
I don't know that's why I think it doesn't make sense because I did it like after like we finished that class and then like I think I've done this question because in my like memory I did this questions but like somehow it just
Okay, yeah, no worries. We can go over all the grammar first. I do want to see.
you don't have to go over all of
Oh,
this.
I won't go.
I
I will
don't
go
think
over the
I did
ones.
all of them wrong.
Yeah. I'll go over the ones where Richard got it wrong, and then you can see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go over all of them. I want to focus more time on the reading too.
Yeah.
So yeah, but really good job though. You got no reading wrong in the middle, which is impressive.
Wait, but can you go over number 7?
Yeah, I'll go over number 7. Yeah, but I'll cover the grammar first, and I'll go back up to the
Yeah,
reading
sure.
basically. Yeah.
Thanks.
So CC, wait, sorry, 24, 25, 29. Okay. So 24, Richard, once again, I want you to look at the choices here, right? Singular, 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 singular. So all three of them are singular, only this one is plural. So then I want to check for plural, right? So what is underlying? So let's look at this. The idea that various cultural and ideologically frameworks a person has internalized underlie. So the frameworks underlie. So it's the frameworks that's the subject. So the answer here is underlie. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you mentioned a really good point, which is you couldn't identify the subject in this sentence, right? So you want to think about what underlie, like what is underlying or what underlies, like what's actually the subject. So you check, right? The idea that the various cultural and ideological frameworks a person has internal. Well, so what's underlying each person? What's behind each person's emotional reaction? Is it the idea or is it the frameworks? It's the frameworks, right? The idea can't underline anything. Yeah. So you thought it was the idea? Yeah. So now you think about it, right? If I tell you the idea underline each emotional reaction, like that makes sense, but it's kind of confusing. But if I say the cultural ideological frameworks underlie each emotional reaction, that makes more sense. It's more detailed, right? So that's also the way you can distinguish it. But if you really can't tell, actually by default, this is just a good answer because it's a singular, singular, singular. So you should check for the plural one. Okay, 25. This one here, American abstract artist Richard, right? And then if I look at this, I see intense and I see intense. So these are the same thing. So what's actually hitting my head is that why do they need a comma here, right? Is that the verb? That's my question. So I'm looking for the subject here. Now this could be the verb, obviously, but is there another verb elsewhere? I read blah 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 blah, comma assembles. So now I'm immediately in my head, I'm like, okay, there's another comma, and there's assembles. Remember, comma, you can remove it. So let's see. What does Richard do? Does he intend his installation to make passerby feel clean and aware of all movements? If it's intense, right? If we do pick intense, like the verb, using it as a verb, then we don't need a comma if it's used as a verb, right? Then we see comma assembles, which becomes really awkward. So in reality, the answer here has to be C, because there's comma and an intending, and this entire thing becomes a modifier. So it's Richard assembles large-scale steel plates into sculptures. Okay, this one is a little tricky. Once again, the only thing they can do, because grammar is too easy, the only thing they can do is shove a lot of random stuff in the middle to try to confuse you. So when you don't find the verb, immediately try to find the verb. I think by default, every single time for every grammar question, you go in, you're trying to find the verb instantly, okay? And then, let's see, what's the next question? 30?
29.
What is it, 29 or 30? Oh, 29, sorry. Because the chat's blocking it, so I'm looking at module 1, okay? 29, okay. So in retrospect, one of the lessons in this is a gene affected by many factors, not the least of which is its interaction with the protein product of other genes. Rather than just focusing on the human genome, experts better understand gene mutation related to disease have begun to consider human protein the complete set of proteins expressed by human genes. So basically, the first sentence is saying that, gene is affected by a lot of factors, right? And then rather than just focusing on one, efforts have tried to basically explore more factors that it's affected by. So what's the relationship between these two? It's logical, right? It agrees, right? First one is saying, it makes sense like chronologically. It doesn't even really agree. It makes sense chronologically. So it's accordingly, because it's like, in this case, this thing happened. So accordingly, I do this, right? We realize that human genes are affected by a lot of different things and not just, why is that said wrong? Because that said is the opposite. So it's usually when you use that said in a sentence, it's like I'm thinking about an example right here. Okay, so let's say today I say, Lucy is a bad student that never does her homework. That said, she still does well on every test. It's opposite. That said is used as opposites. Does it make sense? Yeah. So I think this is just a question where you mistaken the relationship. The proper way to use that said is opposite, right? It's like you say something, that being said, the opposite is fine too. So yeah. So it's good. Okay, let's go back up to do the vocab, because you guys got quite a bit of vocab. Ooh, that's way too far. Vocab wrong. So we have 30 minutes left. That's a good amount of time. So we're gonna go through the vocab questions that you guys got wrong, and then we're going to then talk about everything else. So first, here. Oh, I think you should know all these words, right, Lucy?
I do. Wait, no, I don't know like B.
Hoard? Okay. Hoard is like, so what's hoard? Like HORD. Is that a word?
I don't know.
I don't think that's a word, sorry. Okay. This word has two meanings, okay? The first meaning is like like you're a hoarder. You hoard everything from people. So for example, the easiest way you think about it is like when COVID first happened, people were hoarding tissue. Like 他们会把卫生纸全部抢走, or before like a typhoon comes, maybe like the grocery stores are all empty because people are hoarding things. They want it for themselves.
Okay.
That's one meaning. Second meaning is just to, hoard is that's the word. So a team of these people found fossil-rich deposit near Australia. They're so well preserved that the team has been able to information about the life forms that left them behind, such as color and patterns. I think this is just like obtain.
What did I choose?
Wait, yeah, what did you choose? Wait,
I'm so surprised. I choose hoard.
Okay. General rule of thumb: if you know 3 words and you don't know 1 word, just don't pick the word you don't know. Unless you're very confident A, B, and C. Sorry, A, C, and D isn't the right answer. Then you pick the word you don't know. But I think it's kind of strange because then you just, when I said obtain, you're like, yeah, obtain, like makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's like a thing you should be careful about, because when it comes to like relationship with vocabulary, it's very difficult. Like I remember one time I was very proud of myself because I didn't know what 1 word meant but I know it's not I know it's not the other three, so I picked the word I didn't know. That's like really hard to do in an actual test, you know what I mean? So
Okay.
train yourself to become indifferent to that, making choices like that, if that makes sense. So you shouldn't pick a word because you know it. You shouldn't also pick a word because you don't know it. It sounds really weird. You use your logic to try to figure it out.
Mhm.
And it's super obvious. Like if I say it like that, it's like, oh yeah, obviously, right? But to actually do it is different. So
Yeah.
okay. Next one, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. So here, do you know what these words mean, Doris? Okay, Lucy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I memorized all of them, but I'm a
Wait,
little.
really? Wait, how do you, is there anywhere you go to memorize these words, or you just like don't know, you search it up and then you understand it,
No,
and then
there's
you know?
a like a app
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
using
yeah.
to like memorize.
Yeah, there is an app. Yeah.
But
So
I forgot what is contentious mean.
contentious. So if I contend with you, what does that mean?
Like 满意.
No, that's content.
Oh,
Contend with a D. What does that mean?
呃，赞扬.
No,
I
contend
forgot.
means to like be like a be like it's like a 比较 like beside 的感觉. So like,
What?
do you know the word contender? Like
No.
the next contender is this person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So contentious is something that's heavily debated about. It's people contend over that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a contender is a person, right? So that someone who is competing with you, that's a competitor or a contender, right? And then to contend is to challenge something. And contentious means it's a challenging thing that people disagree about, and therefore they argue about it all the time. Okay. Yeah. So one thing that's very interesting is tenuous means it's like a lot of work, right? Like 很累. Tenuous almost sounds like tedious. And
Well, I
if you
thought
know,
tenuous means like fragile or something.
I don't think so.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
I could be wrong though.
I think it's, I think I'll probably be wrong.
Oh yeah. Wait, it does mean it also does mean fragile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, wait, damn, you know it better than me. Okay. Yeah.
No, because when I was memorizing the word, like I
Mhm.
usually just memorize one meaning of it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Right.
So
Yeah.
I
And
think,
then I did not know tenuous means fragile, but yeah, no, that's good. And then endearing means sorry, and enduring means it lasts a long time, right? Contentious means it's like hotly contested, like people are talk about it all the time. And then a conspicuous means it's like, how will you describe conspicuous?
obvious.
Uh, I guess so, but I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
it's like, yeah, I think obvious is
Conspicuous.
Notable? I don't know.
yeah. Like that's a good idea. That's a good way to put it, right? So, so the War of 1812 has something in history of Britain because it's overshadowed by the much larger current conflict against Napoleon, and partly because it essentially maintained a geopolitical status for Britain. The country neither gained or lost territory as a result of its participation in the war. Oh no, this is a question. What I mean, yeah, the answer is yeah, okay, the answer is A. Good. So wait, this is actually funny. I remember this. Okay, so it's kind of like this. Okay, it's basically what it's saying is the war is completely useless. Like as in people don't really care about it because it's overshadowed, right, by Napoleonic France, the conflict between Britain and France. So it's not contentious because it's overshadowed. It's not that important. In fact, people don't even really remember it because nothing changed. So it's not also conspicuous because it's not obvious to see. Like people often just forget about it. It's also not enduring because people stop talking about it. So the answer is just the only word that's left over, which is also the word I didn't know. But A is the answer. Does that make sense? Because you don't know, because other things doesn't really make sense.
Wait, but what does tenuous means here?
So you just mentioned weak, right?
Uh-huh.
Like it's like fragile. So you're thinking about tenuous as in, I think one thing
Tenuous.
you're thinking about tenuous as in like a physical property. Like if I tell you like, oh, this table was very tenuous, then if I hit the table should break, right? But a lot of times what English words like to use is like to use a word's physical meaning and attach it to something more imagery based. So think about it as if tenuous means fragile, and fragile also means weak, then the War of 1812 has a weak place in the memory of in the historical memory, meaning it's not remembered at all.
Okay.
Does that make sense? You can
Yeah.
project the physical sense into the metaphorical. That's like way too fancy. It's more like a word. Yeah. Okay. And then what are we doing? 5, 6, 7. Okay. Claims about the original significance of this thing, leaping ritual, depicted in paintings and leaping rituals are difficult to successfully do something. We know so little about the people, archaeological and minerals, that assertions about what bold leaping meant to them will almost inevitably, meaning you cannot avoid it, rely on significant speculation. So the claims about the significance are hard to what? Why are they hard to do? They're hard to know because we don't know anything about them. So are they hard to summarize? That implies that we have something to summarize, but we don't. Are they hard to adjust? No, because we don't even know what it stands for. So depicted in paintings, so the claims about it are hard to imagine or hard to defend. In this case, they're hard to defend because you can't even really imagine what. So basically, you have no idea what this thing is. So can you defend claims? Like what can you do about these claims? You can't imagine. I mean, you're imagining them, so it's hard to defend, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Number 6. So function as the underlying sentence. Ooh, are these the questions you don't like, Lucy? Where it's kind of like narrative almost.
I mean, I guess it depends.
It's like Old English. I think one thing that's really difficult is like Old English. You guys have to get used to reading it. And Old English has a lot of that like logical flip, basically. They'll just like say the sentence in reverse for no reason.
Yeah.
You don't like reading questions. I just find I don't like reading questions too. Okay. So the following what is the function of the underlying sentence? I will always read top here. And the reason why you always read the top is because if you don't need it, they won't give it to you, right? So notice how for these like scientific articles, they usually don't give you the top because you don't need the context. So if they give it to you, that means you should always read it before we read the actual text itself. So the text is adopted by this. It's traveling by boat. So the situation is 3 men in a boat, and then this guy is in a boat with 2 other people. So this person told us stories about how he had gone across channel. English channel is like it's like a strait. It's like a water. When it was so rough that passengers had to be tied onto their beds, and that he and the captain were the only 2 living souls on board who were not ill. Sometimes he and the second mate who were not ill, but it was generally he and one other man. If not,
I definitely hate this kind
of
question.
Yeah, if not he and another man, then it was he by himself. So let's think about what this means. Okay. So basically, the English Channel is a body of water. Yeah, it sounds really weird, and that's because it's Old English. So the water was so tough, right? 它就很晃 that they have to be tied to their beds, like as in like you have to be tied down somewhere so you don't move, or else you're bouncing up and down and you get really dizzy. So then he and the captain were the only 2 who did not feel ill. Sometimes it was he and a second mate who were not ill, but generally it was he and another man. So it's always he is never ill, basically. It's like, oh, usually it's him and the captain that's not dizzy, but sometimes it's him and someone else, but sometimes it's him and another person. If not he and another man, if he and another man is not the only one, are not the only ones that are sick, then it was he by himself. Meaning, what is he trying to say? He's never sick.
Never sick.
That's it. He's just like he's a complete Chad, you know. He's just the goat. He doesn't get sick. So that's it. So then here, right? It's like he's like flexing, you know what I mean? He's like, yeah, I'm never sick. It's like I'm just so cool. Okay. Now for the function of the unlearned sentence for this one, several studies have found neglectable electoral consequences. Do you know what negligible means? Not neglectable, negligible.
It's like you can just ignore.
You can just ignore it. Yeah, it's not that important. Specifically, it's like you can neglect it and it wouldn't really matter, right? So for governments that impose physical austerity measures, yet some European governments recently suffered electorally due to their austerity programs. So what's happening is opposite, right? Like several studies have found that it's not that important, yet other companies, several studies have found that it's not that important to impose physical austerity. Do you know what austerity means?
No.
Or no?
I don't know.
Okay. Let me search up the specific words. It's hard to describe for me. Basically, it's kind of like
austerity.
Okay, I know it right now. Yeah.
I don't want to say taxes though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really don't want to say that because it's not. But for the sake of this, think about it like that.
Okay.
Some European governments recently suffered due to their austerity programs. So this person attribute this incongruity to government tendency, right? Not followed in a recent European to implement austerity programs strategic to avoid electoral cost, which has obscured the inherent political risk of austerity measure in the election data I've examined. So, yeah. Sorry, oh, my phone's gonna fall. Okay. I guess B, but I can't tell why A is not correct. Okay.
I choose A.
You choose A?
Yeah.
Okay. And then wait for okay, and then you guessed okay, and yeah, so Richard said he guessed B, but he can't tell now why he can't tell why A is not correct. Okay, so let's read through A. It explains a discrepancy between what has been observed in real life study and what has been observed in study setting, what has been observed in real world setting, that the text goes on to assert is attributable to the studies not using real world data. So is the back portion actually true? So the front is really good, right? I like the front, but is the back actually correct? So they and colleagues attribute the incongruity to government's tendency, not followed in the recent European cases. So they attribute this to government tendency to implement austerity programs strategically to avoid electoral costs, which has obscured the political risks of austerity measure in the election data they have examined. So what is that?
Real world data.
Yeah. So it's a little bit confusing. What it's saying, you want to break this down, right? So they have attributed this incongruity, basically means this difference in the studies and the real life, right? To government's tendency, not followed in the European cases, not followed in the cases, right? And then to implement austerity programs strategically to avoid costs. So setting spending cuts to take effect only after the next election. Basically, they can spend as much as they want now because the spending cuts are only happening after the election, after this election, which has obscured the political risk of austerity measures in the election data they have examined. So basically, they still use real world data. So this back portion here is wrong. Right? Because all the studies use real world data. But what's happening, what it's saying is that the data the scholars are examining is skewed. It's not as correct as what you want. It's biased data basically, because the European case because it's not followed, right? Like the incongruity in the tendency. So basically, okay. Here, that's I'll explain like this, okay? 就是一般来说，如果你们要选举的话，对不对？如果政府今天要说，哦，we're gonna reduce taxes， 好了，他们政府不是比较少钱可以花吗？ But usually 这些政府他们说 we'll reduce taxes after the next election， 为什么？代表他们现在还是可以花很多钱。Does that make sense? But this trait is not followed in the recent European cases. So usually 他们一般来说政府都会这样做，就是他们想要
现在没有这样做。
可是他们观察的 European governments 没有这样做。So the data that these studies are based on is different than the European cases. It doesn't mean the European cases doesn't mean the data is fake. It's just the context is different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And specifically here, the text goes on to say attribute to the studies not using real world data. No, it's the studies not where the government is actually kind of, it sounds really weird. Basically, 这些政府都在做好看而已，然后他们都做而已，对不对？可是 European 的 government 他们政府没有做，他们是认真在做 ，and because of that， 他们的 data 才不准。
Okay.
It sounds really weird. So the way I'll think about it is this, okay? If this is confusing to read, what I'll do is I always remove this. I'll always remove this, But like in my head, I'll remove this first. Oops, sorry, not that. Wrong one. Sorry. I'll remove this first and then read it. So they attribute the incongruity to the tendency to implement austerity programs strategically. But what did the European governments employ strategically? No, they just did it for fun. Or no, they didn't do it for fun. They did it because they care about their people. And that's why it's different. So it's not because, yeah, that's the idea. So one thing that's very interesting is so I think C and D is pretty, 你们都没有选 C 跟 D, 你们选 A 跟 B, stuck between A and B, right? So one thing is this front here is correct. 到这边为止都是对的。你看, identifies a conflict in research finding and recent events is a complicating factor in the data used to generate the findings. 这是我后面讲的，对不对？就是 the fact that the European governments are like actually not doing this strategically is messing up the data. 可是你看它前面都是对，它前面其实两个问题的前面是一样的。It's the same thing. So it's the back that really makes a difference, if that makes sense. Then in this case, then it sounds really weird, but could we agree that this back portion here, only looking at the back, this is more specific than this? 第一题A 的 choice 的后面讲的比 B 还要更 specific. But it's because it's more specific that it's wrong. Like B is this is so broad that it can't be wrong. Because imagine complicating factor used to generate those findings could literally be that the data is just not real as well. You know what I mean? Like it's so broad that it cannot be wrong. So always be careful about when it goes detailed. If it's gonna be very detailed, you have to watch out for why is it being so detailed? You know, it should almost raise alarm bells. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then be careful about that. Yeah. 这题比较难一点啦. Like this is one of the questions where I'm like, okay, it's fine you guys get this wrong because of time. Like not because I think so in practice, it's very important to understand it. But when actually doing the questions, I can understand getting this question wrong because, well, it's a lot to process, right? You're not spending, if I gave you guys 30 minutes on this question, you guys will probably get it right. But to think about it over and over again. But like when you have like 2 minutes, it's kind of hard. So I don't blame that too much. 11, 15, 16. Okay. Okay. Main idea of the text, let's read. Literary theorists distinguish between this thing, content. So they distinguish between content and, I guess, chronological or timeline of events. In the film Godfather, the content is the story, and then the timeline is the presentation of the story as it alternates between two timelines. Okay. This guy maintained that the content and timeline are insufficient to describe the narrative. He held that categorizing them, right, discount the ways that other factors play into. So basically, the way I'll put it is many people believe that to describe a narrative, there is the content and there's time. And this guy believes that it's not good, like by only everything is determined by content and time, overlooks a lot of other factors that actually matters. That's it. So he argues that there are important characters in narrative are not fully constituted by the context. And yeah, this is good. Claiming that meaning is not inherent in narrative, but is created when an audience encounters narratives, so narratives are interpreted. No, because that doesn't mention timeline, right? Story methods and Godfather 2 scenes usually complicated, Indian understood. No, and narratives are other context. No. So the answer is A. Yeah, it is A. Does that make sense? He's saying that so normally people say there's this thing. Okay, even easier way to think about it. This thing matters, and most people believe this and this matters. Yet this guy believes that these two things are not good enough to describe everything. More things should be involved. So A is the only one that talks about that. Yeah, exactly. Like content and time doesn't cover all the details. So like maybe, for example, content and time doesn't cover, like maybe the music matters, right? Or maybe, you know, the way the characters say something matters. Like the diction of their words matter. 15, 16, I think. Yeah, 15, 16. Okay. Okay. So these are the questions you guys don't like. Poetry. The poem highlights an ambivalence towards poetry as speaker acknowledged merit while also expressing a sense of the pleasure. So once again, what are we looking for? We're looking for two things, right? Highlights, and what does ambivalence mean? It means you're not sure how you should feel, right? Don't really know. So he highlights its merits, but also expressing displeasure. So it's good and it's bad, to put it simply. So it has to express both, right? Nor is it valid to discriminate against business and documents. All these phenomena are important to know because it's talking about poetry being good and bad. This is talking about like business documents and school books are also good, which doesn't make sense. One must make a distinction, however, when dragged into prominence by half poets, the result is not poetry. It's saying like some people do bad poems, maybe. When poems becomes so derivative as to become unintelligible, the same thing may be said for us, that we do not admire what we cannot understand. He's saying that poetry is really good, but if you don't understand it, then there's no value behind it. This is like a really good answer. Reading poetry, however, with a perfect contempt for it, one discovers that there is in it, after all, a place for genuine. So this is saying like reading poetry, however, with perfect contempt for it. Contempt, I think perfect contempt is a confusing word here.
Yeah, I don't know, like, isn't it contempt means like 蔑视,
Yeah,
轻蔑?
exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, this thing here, I would say, is actually a better. I'll be picking between C and D, basically, right? And then now, more specifically, what do you have to do? Like you have to think about, in a case where you're not sure what the answer is, you have to think about what I just told you, which is acknowledge its merits, right? While also expressing a sense of displeasure. So there's two emotions here, right? So is there two here? So perfect contempt, one discovers there is a place for genuine. It. Perfect contempt means you have to like 你要很 cynical 的读它. You have to like read it very cynically. Yeah. So you have to be negative almost. And then if you view it from a really critical lens, let's say you're really critical at it, then there's a place for it to be good. So that kind of plays into the two emotions we talked about, right? Is the answer 15? Yeah, it is D. Does that make sense? And why is it better than C? So I'm guessing you picked C, Richard. It's because what's the problem with C? C is it has no two features. It's just saying if you don't understand it, you can't admire it. But there is no that interplay between merits and displeasure, right? Does that make sense? So you have to you have to have the two characteristics. So notice how even when I read it, I thought C might be the right answer the first time. But when you read D, you know you're picking between the two. Now, when you're picking between the two, stick with always what we know, which is, in this case, from the very beginning, I told you there has to be two things. It's good and it's bad. So here you have to read it really cynically. If you read it really critically, then you can appreciate the good. So there's two things there. Whereas for C, just saying if you don't understand it, you don't understand it. So yeah. 16. Oh God, I don't even want to read this. Okay. Okay, so they support their conclusion. So I'm looking for their conclusion. Some climate models for United States predict that while precipitation may remain unchanged, they will become concentrated into fewer but more intense rains. Okay. So they simulate the amount of water entering aquifers being used for irrigation purposes. Concluded that concentration into it's basically like there'll be less rainy days in general, but stronger rainy days, right? And they say that will result in higher amount of dry days, triggering more irrigation. But this change in irrigation output is highly sensitive to the baseline concentration precipitation in the area that currently exists. Okay. So now let's look at this. So I just support the data, right? So very quickly, that's what are we looking for here? Change in irrigation output is sensitive to baseline concentration of precipitation. And then concentration, so there will be, so dry days will go up. And then there'll be more irrigation. So irrigation will also go up. But the change in irrigation is sensitive, but that's dependent on the baseline. Okay, that's it. So let's understand the baseline concentration of annual precipitation. And then if it's somewhat concentrated, then it's this. If it's evenly distributed, then it's this, right? Okay, I see. So this is confusing. Let me see what you're saying. Where do you read? What do you do? I read everything? No. So notice the way I read it. I do read everything, but I just read everything fast by ignoring half the things. If that makes sense. I basically read it and I grab what's important. So as I read it, I told you guys, right? Like, there will be less rainy days, but stronger rainy days. That's what I concluded from reading the talk. You know, so you should always read it, but interpret it in your own words. That's important. And then also skip things that don't matter. So like some climate models in the Western United States basically don't. You read it and it doesn't really matter to you, so skip it as much as you can. Just it sounds really weird. That's like a tip to read faster, basically. Okay, so let's look at the difference. So if it's concentrated, right, then changes in water irrigation use is not that significant. Same thing. So it seems that if the water is already somewhat concentrated, the change is not as big. Whereas if the water is pretty evenly distributed, then having more concentrated rain would result in bigger changes in everything. That's basically what you have to notice on this graph, right? And which makes sense, by the way. It makes sense because if you're going to have less rainy days, but stronger rainy days, then places which already have higher concentration will change less, right? Whereas, if it's more even throughout its history, then if you suddenly have really strong rainy days, then the impact will be bigger. So the baseline precipitation was somewhat concentrated. The amount of water used for irrigation will increase 0.4 for groundwater, whereas the amount of water entering aquifers increases 11% if it's evenly distributed. So that's fine. That's a fine data, right? But the problem is it's comparing different things. So irrigation and groundwater, it's comparing irrigation and groundwater. And then for the second group here, if it's evenly distributed, it's comparing change in aquifers. So notice how basically I'm grabbing this one, and this one. But does that actually make a good comparison? It doesn't make a comparison, right? If anything, you need to compare what? You need to compare like this one to this one, or this one to this one, or this one to this one. You need to compare the same variable, basically. So no, that's not good. And then if baseline percent sound concentrated, use of water will increase slightly, whereas it will increase 9% surface hour and for groundwater. Yeah. So it'll increase 9 to 7.9. And then if it's water used for irrigation will increase slightly. So I'm comparing water used for irrigation will increase slightly, which is this one. And then whereas it will increase 9 for surface water and 9% for groundwater, it's baseline precipitation. Yeah, here and here, right? So irrigation will increase slightly. It's comparing these two to these two, basically. So that's good. That's a good comparison we want. Somewhat concentrated amount of water entering will increase 4.9%, amount used for irrigation will increase 0.4. So what is this? This is saying if it's somewhat concentrated, it's only looking at 1, 2, and 3. But once again, if we're making a comparison, we want to compare this and this. We want to compare these two, right? So you can't just only list out this. Very quickly, based on somewhat concentrated water use will increase, decline by a small amount, whereas it will increase 9 and 11. Decline. No, it doesn't decline. Whereas increase 9 to 11 for groundwater baseline. Yeah, no, it doesn't decline. Nothing declines, right? It's just changing. We don't know if it's increasing or decreasing. Yeah, so the answer is B. It's very important here to note the comparison you want to make. Okay. If you should just mark it, yeah. So I think one thing that I would say is you should just mark it if you're gonna spend too much time on it. Yes, you should mark it because you shouldn't spend too much. Because I think if you spend too much time on it, you might panic and then spend less time, and then like mess up the easier questions you get right. Like you usually jump to do grammar first. You know that's a good strategy. I think everyone is different. Like 我知道以前有些人他们很邪教的做法是他们会先他们会先读 choices， 然后就是 even for reading questions 他们会读 choices。然后再去读这个 which I think that's like a little bit too crazy for me, like,
Yeah,
like damn, like that's kind of scary. Like I can't do it. I mean I'll probably do well if I do that, but I'm like too scared to do that. So
I mean, if you really like the choices first, I usually forget what the choices.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? So but 他们是读 choices 然后感觉答案对然后去找答案 but that's like crazy. Like I'm like, okay, what if 你感觉错了? So like I don't really believe in that much. And they used to do that in the old SAT where you have one like long passage and 10 questions. So they'll just read the question and go read the passage like that. And like that's crazy. Like I can never do that. So explore choices that work for you. If you think doing grammar like does it for you, that's good. But then I'm telling you then, if that's the case, you cannot be getting these questions wrong. Right? Does it make sense, Richard? Because like you're spending your time indexing on these, right? Whereas I think vice versa, if you're really good at grammar already, then what I'll say is just do the reading and just trust your grammar is good enough to where you have enough time to fix it, like to solve it, right? And rely on but in case you can't budget exactly. But if you think doing grammar first can let you budget your time and reading better, that's also the way you should do it. But that's also probably why this will happen. Because I was thinking about why this happened, right? And that's probably because you were doing your grammar and then you ran out of time. So you guess. Same thing here. You probably just guess, right? And but then like the whole idea is for you, do you think if you spend more time on this and then just like, sounds really weird, but let's say today you finish doing here and then you have 5 minutes left. Would you get 2 questions? Like, would that be helpful here? Or because if you don't have enough time, these are basically guaranteed wrongs because they're hard, right? They're harder. Whereas for grammar, maybe it'll be better. So that's for you to explore. I can't say. Okay, yeah, exactly. Because I'm like, if you're gonna spend a lot of time doing it, you might get it wrong anyways. Then yeah, then do it at the end. Exactly. So it's completely up to you as to how you should approach this. Okay. I would say explore. So try. I mean, if you're doing that and you think it works, then continue doing it. Okay. So I've been talking a long time. So what I will say, what we should do is I'll give you guys a mock test again, because I think right now we just do as many mocks as we possibly can. And then don't grade it yourself. It sounds really bad. Like hold the temptation to grade it yourself. And then next class, what I want to do is, but make sure to time yourself. So Lucy, time yourself this time.
Okay.
And then after that, in class, what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to look at the answers you guys got wrong and explain to me why it's wrong. Like I did the explaining this time, but I want you guys to explain it to me why it's wrong. I can like correct you guys if not. Because a lot of times when I ask students like, oh, why do you pick A? They're like, they try to explain it, but when you actually try to explain, you're like, shit, I don't even know why I picked that, So you have to be, so that's why I want us to do next class. And then if we have time, we will do a little bit of we'll work on a mock together. Then we can talk about it and discuss about the ideas and stuff like that. I think that will be helpful. Okay. So yeah, grammar, just make sure you don't get grammar wrong. Like I think you guys are good enough to not get grammar wrong. Please do not get the last 3 questions wrong because that's crazy. Those are 3 points, right? And then for vocab, do your best. That's all I can say, right? And then like review vocab if possible. Lucy, if you can, like share with him the app you're using to memorize the words, and maybe
I think we're using the same app.
You're using the same app. Okay, then
yeah.
Richard, it seems like you gotta grind harder. Grind harder on the app, right? But yeah, I think that's it for this week, and then not this week, sorry, because we're meeting again on Thursday. Wait, Thursday for you guys, right? Or Thursday for me?
August 5th, I think it.
August 5th for you guys, so it's Thursday for me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because we have a 15-hour time difference right now.
Okay.
So yeah. Well, I'll see you guys then. Okay. I'll send you guys a mock, so you have 3 days to do it. Okay. Good luck on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll check your emails. Yeah. Okay. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.